You're with Mike Ryan on today's News Talk, The Pulse.
They carried stockmen. They carried soldiers. They carried legends from Beersheba to the mountains of the high country. The thunder herd still rides. Skies and snow gums bow in winter light. 1,000 shadows cross the dawn, their wild hearts burning through the night. Their blood remembers campfire smoke, long dusty trails and stockmen's hands. The freedom of a younger world still running through this ancient land. Listen. The mountains know their language. Listen. The valleys speak their names. They are the thunder rolling beneath the southern sky. From Beersheba's fields of glory to the mountains standing high, no chains can hold them. No walls contain them. The spirit of the light horse rides. They are the thunder, and the mountains know their names. Across the burning Sinai sands, they carry fate in steady hands. Through dust and fire they thundered on toward Beersheba's fateful dawn. Horse and rider forged as one, a rolling wave against the guns. The desert shook beneath their stride as Australia rose in pride. They are the thunder rolling beneath the southern sky. From Beersheba's fields of glory to the mountains standing high, no chains can hold them, no walls contain them. The spirit of the light horse ride. They are the thunder, and the mountains know their name. And standing on the highest ridges, when the world below is gone to sleep, the ancient stallions face the darkness, guarding secrets they still keep. They remember every stockman, every drover, every mountain horseman, every charge, every rider who never came home, every horse who carried him there. Ride on. Ride on. Back. to the high country. The thunder herd still rides.
And welcome to The Pulse. Thank you for Stephen Tripp. What a great talent that guy is, by the way, and speaks a lot of sense. So appreciate it. Tomorrow at 3, because we're kicking off with more hours. Tomorrow at 3 we'll have Anna Power with at the Anna Power Hour. And another great show. It'll be absolutely fantastic, and I appreciate all their kindness and their help. And I think they enjoy it too, which is just absolutely brilliant. Instant Polls is our official sponsor. If you want to increase your bottom line, boost your communication with frontline staff, and gather valuable data from your most important resource, that's your employees, then visit instantpolls.online to learn more. Now, this week's poll on The Pulse is, do you believe the media coverage of bird flu in Australia is accurate? It's not. Not. No. And no. I'm being polite. Anyway, just use, not trying to influence you, no. Okay, N-O. What? Somebody wrote in, give me a Jack Goff impersonation. No. That's just bullshit. There you are, that's Jack Goff there. That should keep you happy. Just use the QR code, by the way, on our screen to vote. Each vote is secure and anonymous and verified by 2FA. The poll closes next Monday, 31st of August. Holiday on Friday in Queensland. Yoo-hoo! I'm still working anyway. It's psychological. It's a virtual holiday for me. And the result will be broadcast on The Pulse after 4 o'clock. The link has been published on our Facebook page, which used to be the Country Telegraph. Now it's The Pulse. And you just, for those who have subscribed, hasn't changed, just a different name. Same beautiful faces, just a different name. Share the link and ask your family and friends to participate. That's please vote. Just vote, no, and make your opinion count. If you have another opinion, we believe in free speech. No. Okay, there you are.
Management was deciding in the dark. We lacked a method to hear from people across the organisation. We started using instant polls under our brand. Their expert design templates made it effortless to ask the right questions of the people who matter most, our frontline teams. We've seen improved profits and happier staff, and we now make better company decisions thanks to instant polls. Join us. Try your first free poll at instantpolls.online.
Vaccines will be rolled out across the country as part of the federal government's plan to stop the spread of the deadly bird flu. Native species in captivity will be top of the agenda as experts warn states and territories to prepare for mass deaths in their backyards.
Feeling the heat in the henhouse. The Federal Environment Minister meeting with conservation groups as the bird flu outbreak takes flight.
Spring and summer are coming. That's when birds get it together and start breeding, and this is when it's going to spread.
Not afraid to ruffle feathers, advocates pushing the Commonwealth for an immediate $200 million response to the H5 strain. With 1 in 5 native bird and mammal species at high to extreme risk from the virus.
To make sure that we're getting rid of weeds where birds are nesting, that we're making sure we have wetland connectivity, that habitat is not being destroyed.
There's currently 236 confirmed detections of the H5 strain in wild birds, with 163 in South Australia, 58 in Victoria, just 1 in Queensland, and now 4 in New South Wales.
Communities are telling us they are devastated. They are in tears about what this might mean on the ground.
The government confirming a $2 million plan to roll out vaccines to states and territories over the coming days. prioritising native species in captivity.
I'm able to confirm today that testing at CSI's laboratory has returned a positive result of the H5 bird flu in samples taken from a long-nosed fur seal at Beachport in South Australia. This is sadly our first confirmed case of the H5 bird flu in a mammal in Australia. I know that this news will be distressing for many Australians, particularly for those people with a close connection to the wildlife and the land, including our First Nations people. And although this is a concerning development, it is not unexpected for us to start to see infection in other wildlife, particularly in marine mammals. I have been advised that at this time the detection does not appear to be associated with other sick or dead marine mammals. An infection of this individual animal is likely to have occurred due to exposure to infected wild birds or the environment that they share. Sadly, we also know that once the H5 bird flu is spreading in the natural environment, it is not possible to avoid significant losses. Across the country, the latest figures indicate that there have now been 298 positive H5 bird flu events in Australia since the outbreak. I want to close by reiterating that at this stage there is no evidence of infection in our poultry or agriculture systems and that the risk to human health remains low. Strongest form of defence.
So there you are. Now, just to clarify, if you see, we think we've imported some pygmies over and to vaccinate all the birds. And I'm being serious here, all the birds. They're running through the long grasses. Got that one. That's how they're going to vaccinate those birds. Watch out for Polly. Polly doesn't want a jab. Jodie Bruning is a sociologist. Let's do that again. Is a sociologist. I can say the word, isn't it terrible? See what happens when I'm stupid? And PSGRN New Zealand's or NZ's lead researcher and primary media contact. PSGRNZ works with qualified researchers and volunteers who work to produce transparent, high-quality science information to educate and inform the public. We have Jodie on to tell us about bird vaccination in New Zealand and questions everyone who cares about our wildlife should be asking. So first of all, Jodie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's great to be here.
I'm just wondering about those pygmies running around the place with those poison darts, getting those birds. Do you think that sort of vaccination will work?
Well, I personally would like to address Julie Collins' discussion on marine mammals. She refers generally to the H5 bird flu. And so that broad term, that generic term, risks implying the evidence of harm is associated with all H5 viruses, infers this massive magnitude of risk posed by the specific, I think, that H5N1 clade that's a, let's call it by the details, 2.3.4.4b virus, which is not being correct. So she's sensationalizing the topic. So the other thing I think it's really important to talk about at the start of this is the fact that we're talking about an HPAI, a high pathogenicity bird flu, avian influenza. And what happens with that is that these pathogenicity describes the capacity of a virus to cause disease. The capacity. It does not mean that every species exposed to that virus will die. There will be high mortality or morbidity rate. And so that HPAI classification is also largely defined on the pathogenicity characteristics and mainly in poultry, in housed birds. So it's really, there's a lot of communication coming out of the agencies right now. I don't know how scientific it is, and it's really concerning to hear this general term of H5 when perhaps they're talking about a far more infectious or dangerous strain. But that whole clade with the 3.4 there's a whole area of viruses in that too. This is why it's It's a really broad thing.
Government's job is to scare the wits out of us. And if you look at their past history over the last few years, it doesn't matter which government, which country, they are scaring the wits out of their people. Now we have this one, and tell me if I'm wrong here. If you were a government minister wanting to continue on the trend that they had set with a slight pause up until now, and if you said, well, let's jump into the mammals, it's going to jump into the humans, lock your door. Do you see government using that as a nefarious mechanism to control, and I'm not being scurrilous here, but to achieve what they want to achieve? Because if you scare people, people want to live. They don't want to die. And if you sort of jumps from a bird to a mammal to your next door neighbour, Betty and Samuel, whatever, and they're walking around with feathers. I mean, surely there's a good case for that, because government is very, very good at distorting or enhancing a fib and pushing it as the truth. And we don't have to look too far back to see that.
Well, Mike, you're possibly a bit more passionate about that issue than I'm probably prepared to discuss.
Yep.
But what I would say is that I consider that we've had austerity in governments, and I consider that when funding is set aside for a specific program, everyone will run along and do it. And that's what we've seen in the past. So they have a program, they want to achieve this, they create the funding, and everyone does it. And so the evidence, so we can talk a little bit about the 300 core breeding birds in New Zealand: the kakapo, the takahe, the shore plover, the black stilt, and the orange-fronted parakeet. They're in the middle of a vaccination campaign now, I understand, with a H5N2 vaccine. There is no evidence that vaccine will prevent ongoing transmission. So this is another key message that we need to understand. There is no evidence that any of these vaccines prevent transmission. They're just at this stage trying to prevent death. But the only problem is, in New Zealand, this H5N2 vaccine is theoretically based on a trial in 2024 and 2025 on using an H5N3 vaccine. Now, the reason I wrote about this in the Daily Telegraph New Zealand article was that we've got all this science jumping without any evidence. And in that article, I wondered what the extent of evidence was for the penguins down in St Kilda, because what we've seen in New Zealand with the Department of Conservation and the Ministry for Primary Industries, they're working in different ways. The Ministry of Primary Industries gets the funding, but they import the vaccine, and also they're the regulator that says, oh, we're going to approve it, even though it's not proven effective. So they're doing that, and they've done that with the H5N2 vaccine as well as the H5N3 vaccine. They're importing it themselves, and they're saying we're going to push it through. Now, these are vaccines designed for poultry. They're not designed for wild birds. And our big concern, and so the trigger in New Zealand to start injecting was that they'd seen the test for migratory seabirds in Australia. So there's no evidence that there is a death risk in New Zealand. It's simply that was the trigger, and then the evidence is based on this extrapolation from a trial in 2024-2025 that has not been scientifically published in any correct manner. It is unauthored, and they present the so-called safe evidence as merely percentages. So we don't even know what of those species that were injected, how many there were. We know at least one died, and they said that was from stress, but that's going to be a problem with all endangered native species. So we're not seeing any evidence that is showing that this will protect the birds. And what that actual trial did acknowledge was, because there has been no real test rate with the H5N1, they really don't know if it's going to be effective. They've looked at the antibody testing, and they've done a hemagglutinin inhibition test on one species of bird, but they haven't published the data on that either. So it's sort of sciencing, but not the sort of science that is robust enough for our national, like these birds are of national interest in New Zealand and Australia. So, but the evidence on the New Zealand side certainly isn't there.
Here's something for you to, because I am actually very concerned, because do they know the side effects of what it will do to the birds? And if looking at different species of birds, not just ones of feathers, surely each one of those is going to react differently. And thirdly, one shot or one dosage doesn't suit all.
This
so what
is
happens to the birds? Do they know what's going on?
This is the problem. This has not been declared. So because birds can't speak like humans, and it's the same problem that we see when we give children vaccines or babies. They can't tell us exactly what their symptoms are. So we're sort of drifting into this, using the antibody response as a proxy. We don't know how, there's no evidence that it's going to stop, and we don't know the exact adverse effects. And the problem is, because they've only sort of shown us this percentage evidence without giving a timeline, so we don't know what happened after the first injection, what happened after the booster injection, what happened 1 or 2 weeks later after each injection, and whether 6 months to 12 months later, those very small cohorts of discrete species, maybe 3 or 4 of each cohort, we don't know, because it's not being declared in this really terrible scientific study. We don't even know that. We can't tell anything, and yet they're launching into to inject 300 core breeding birds in endangered species. So I can only wonder if the Australian science is just as bad. I don't think it will be, but we just don't know until it's published transparently.
The governments are advised by the Invasive Species Council. There's no doubt about that. They have a lot of oomph with various state governments and also federal governments. They're very good lobbyists. And Jack Goff, on behalf of the Invasive Species Council, was pushing for the vaccination for the birds. Jack is a former union member and lobbyist in the New South Wales Parliament, and has no qualifications. And they do have, and I have to be clear about this, they do have scientists who are part of the Invasive Species Council, but I don't think any of those scientists are vaccinologists or anything like that. So we have then the Australian government, for example, wanting to vaccinate, as with the New Zealand government, to protect the birds. They have no evidence. They have nothing to back that up to say that it won't kill the birds. And if you don't know, for example, if you don't have a clear conclusion that's safe, then one would think it's unwise to do it. Peter McCullough, who's a friend of ours, Peter McCullough, very famous doctor from around the world in the US, and Peter says that in a small town, not a small town, a fairly large town, but not a huge town in the States, they had bird flu there, and they kept getting this bird flu. It would come back quite regularly, and they didn't know what to do. And he said, "Have you tried natural immunity?" And that's what he did. And he said, anyway, Peter was saying that it was a success. That itself would seem less dangerous than trying to jab the birds.
Absolutely. So what happens, and this is different for poultry. So poultry flocks are different because they have a far higher turnover. I'd also like to mention, as a sociologist, my undergraduate is in agribusiness. So I've come to this through looking at risk for poultry farmers, particularly small independent poultry farmers that could face risk from higher thresholds, and they would go out of business, leaving the big boys playing. So the idea of a cross-reactive response from the virus is actually something that we could think of might be a thing in longer-lived endangered species populations. So over time, viruses become endemic in those populations, and the birds can experience asymptomatic or subclinical infection. And this is part of the challenge. We're not seeing the seropositivity testing we're seeing is this one test. Oh, it came back as H5, and another test, it came back as H5. So if we talk about effects in mammals, in the US, there's a US case study talking about dairy cow workers because you get the influenza A in the dairy cows, I believe. And what you would see in the workers handling the cows all the time was conjunctivitis. That was the risk that was being identified. But of course, you've got this other problem, and I am jumping around a little bit, that if you've got a ton of vaccinators vaccinating wild birds that are flapping, that are stressed, we're more likely to see the transference of that whatever infection is going to affect humans by this increased connection with the birds. This is the opposite of what should be happening. And remember, the Mexican, I wrote on a Substack May last year. It was called oh, my brain, plucking, I'll get there. And that Substack discussed the American model. It discussed that they were injecting the birds, they were still dying, the H5 was still circulating, nothing could stop the circulation. They were talking about closing down the housing the birds. I don't think that's significantly would stop the circulation because you've still got air ingress. And so this idea that we think that the injection is going to stop any passing on of infection is very incorrect. So we can't think of that as our big hope. It's more, does that protect that particular bird? And this is a problem. We have not had any transparency, at least in New Zealand, about risk benefit. What was the decision-making threshold? So we've got the expected morbidity and mortality, what is happening, and that we don't know that because they're not testing enough birds to find out how endemic, how much H5N1 is being detected naturally across all these species. So what is then the population risk? And then we've got to balance that against the known and unknown risks of vaccination, but then you've got the capture, the handling, and the repeated boosting, particularly for birds that might be wild and might not fly back for the boost.
So when they say, and again, I go back to governments and take away all the other stuff that you said I'm very passionate about. If it has moved from bird to mammals, we're mammals, so therefore it's crossed that barrier. So it's the first time in history, what I can see, it's the first time in history ever that it's crossed over into mammals. Can you tell me a natural flu, a natural virus, it hasn't done it in millions and millions of years. Why is it doing now, or is it not natural? Because Peter McCullough also said that he feared a lab leak because they created a virus. They play with viruses all the time, and all of them you don't want to get out, and some do sometimes. If this is because in the millions of years we've not had, well, not that I can think of, if you can tell me I'm wrong, I'd be grateful, that we've had a virus cross from a bird into you and me. And so therefore, if I'm right, and even if I'm wrong, you would assume then that this is probably man-made. And Peter McCullough saying it sounds like a lab leak. It does have some merit and worth some consideration. Would you agree?
Well, we certainly can't rule out a lab leak because we've had an expansion and explosion in labs globally, and there's a lot of scientific literature showing that that there is evidence that the labs aren't as tightly controlled as they should be. So we know that this is a problem. I side on the fact that possibly there has been transference to humans in the past. We've only started obsessively testing about the H5 strains in about the last 6 years, if not the last 3 years. We can presume that in the millennia before now, where people were living much more closely to wildlife and to animals, that there could have been transference. As I said, I'm a sociologist. I'm looking at the scientific evidence we're being shown. So what I'm saying now is highly speculative. Something that the Physicians and Scientists for Global Responsibility, PSGR, are also looking at is the risk right now, for example, from diabetes and from hyperinsulinemia, which is promoting metabolic syndrome, including mental illness, and the dietary disaster we've got in our populations, leading to early heart attacks, early death, and large medical diagnosis with lots and lots of drugs in the 50s and 60s. People can be on 10 drugs, for example. This is a far greater population health risk than HbA1. It is the overstated fluff around this, based on the evidence to date, based on who are in our hospitals and who are filling up our hospitals, tells me that this is a political agenda of the government because they're overstating the risk. They're generalising the H5 concept. They're not publishing the data on the thresholds and the decision making. So the lack of transparency and the clarity on this sends us all the message that we should be very skeptical of government agencies. So there is always a tiny risk for human health. There is a risk for endangered species, but the cues we're seeing in our hospitals right now are not from an avian influenza, and the governments can be addressing this major health crisis and not clogging up the media with this problem.
And if you look at, you mentioned the media, clogging up the media is like, bring it on. In this country, and I presume you're aware anyway, but the federal government pays 70-something million to some of the media outlets around the country. And then they audit those media outlets to make sure that they're continuing on the good work of telling their audience what they want them to hear. And those outlets are legacy media and some independent media. Crikey's one, which is dreadful. I always featured in Crikey. They wouldn't leave me alone. And the other one is Michael West Media, and why you would ever do business with the government unless you, and I understand you got to eat, but at the same time once you start taking money from the Pied Piper, you're in trouble. So they're pushing their narrative. The narrative should be scrutinised, and people should go, nah, it doesn't pass the pub test. But when you had the media pushing and pushing, so people get home, throw on the telly or go online, and it's bad bird flu, and you can see it starts off a bit here, a bit there, and it sort of just dies a little bit. Then something else comes out, a bit of nudging here and a bit of nudging there, then it ramps up. And now that it's jumped from birds to mammals. And again, no one's questioning the PCR test, by the way. And it's, I think, 45 cycles, which you can get a chicken wing and they can give you a result. A dead chicken wing too, for that matter, from Kentucky, fried chicken. So all these things, and to me, there is not a whole lot of science involved here. It's saying there is a whole lot of science, but it just seems to, and I understand why they're doing that, by the way. That's just my inherent nature. I do understand why they're doing that. But surely the media and the Australian public should be questioning what they're hearing, because this is highly unusual. And when you start presenting the fear factor, you're going to, as you said, you're going to have a mass, not a mass cull, that's a terrible thing to say, but you're going to have people popping into hospitals. The next thing will be hospitals can't handle this new flu. And then you start gearing up for whatever activity the government wants to do. And I'm off track here a little bit, but if you look at the Australian government in their online, it talks about 2030. In 2030, I used to go, maybe it used to be 2020, I think, and then 2021. And so it's 2030 that they want to own this and do that, joined at the hip with the UN. And the story itself, crossing from bird to mammal, is now starting to make legacy media or mainstream media around the world. So I'm trying not to bring you in here on what I'm alluding to, but surely the Australian public or the media who are supposed to and are not, but they're meant to be to watch over us and tell us exactly what is happening and the truth, surely they should be questioning what is being presented by government.
Let's go back to Julie Collins in that presentation at the start, and she talked about, was it sea lions or seals having the H5? Tell me, has everyone here seen sea lions or seals basking out in the sun, and they're surrounded by big rocks that are covered in bird poo? The birds sit on them, the birds love them, they've been living with birds for millennia. Of course, the sea lions and the seals are going to have strains of H5. The logic tells us this is what happens to sea lions and seals when they live near seagulls. So, we've got to keep asking questions, because we've got to say, hey, Australian government or New Zealand government, did you look at that COUTY 2026 review where they found striking differences in outcomes between wild bird species and populations, including infected birds would remain healthy and survivors would develop H5 antibodies, and the difference between the adult and the juvenile survival that would suggest possible immunity? Are they looking at the science? We can be skeptical and we can keep asking questions. That's what we do at PSGR. We look at the policies, we look at the legal precedent or the law relating to that, the regulatory decisions, and what the scientific literature is saying. And then we put that together to try to understand a situation. And the big problem is part of the capture of funding in the last 25 years has been turned into, for science, has been turned into following the innovation. And innovation is a proxy term, or patents that come from innovation is a proxy term for GDP. Economic growth through innovation. We don't have the ornithologists, the scientists that are experts in ornithological immunology that can come in, that are not working for the government, that have that independence. That's why you're talking to a sociologist now. Our science systems are failing us because they're not saying what is the problem and then how do we make the solutions and the innovations. They're leading by the innovation first. So the public of New Zealand suffer from that because we end up being ignorant, because we don't have the scientists. And the problem also is that the science funding is so hard to get. So the leaders of scientific research groups might spend 30% of their time trying to get funding. They are not going to speak up against scientific policy or government policy, if it contradicts or puts their funding at any risk, because it could close down their laboratory, it could lead to them having to lay off all the postgrads and the researchers. So we have this terrible scientific silence, at least in New Zealand. And my master's research, I also interviewed Australian scientists, and the problem is there too. Not to the same extreme degree in New Zealand, but it's part of the problem. This is why we see in New Zealand, the Department of Conservation and the Ministry for Primary Industries having all the information that is then sent to media, and media covers what they tell them, and there are no contradictory, challenging perspectives that will come onto the media and challenge that, unless they're the Green Party or they're PSGR. But we won't be invited onto mainstream media in New Zealand, or there's someone that has some sort of thoughtful opinion. But this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a breakdown in knowledge, and the public are suffering for that.
You know, and again, I'm not trying not to put you in a uncomfortable position here, but if you go back a couple of years, what happened a couple of years ago? That's right, we had exactly the same thing, and the invitation to discuss a particular jab in the arm, or to talk about it from scientists and those who are concerned, was muted. And I see the same thing here. What is it with government? Is it the bureaucrats that they've made a decision? We're not going to budge. We don't want to hear any opposition, so you can all go away. Or is it just another excuse?
I've found, prior to COVID, prior to 2020, I had tried raising attention to glyphosate. Glyphosate pesticide was my background. And I was trying to say we need to talk about spraying glyphosate on food crops. So it wasn't an attack on farmers. It was saying we shouldn't be eating glyphosate sprayed food because there's been no risk assessment. There's been no trials in terms of that are showing how safe this is, unless they're supplied by industry, and most of them were 20 years old. I had tried so fervently and consistently to try to get traction for this in the New Zealand media. Why was there no risk assessment of the most commonly used herbicide? Why could we not talk about multiple myeloma in farmers? Why could we not talk about herbicides causing anxiety and depression in farmers? All of these questions don't mean farmers can't use a herbicide to spray out a crop. It means we need to understand what the risks are. And that has never been done in New Zealand. So I had been aware that the media would not cover anything that would contradict the status quo. So once we entered COVID and there was all of a sudden a coronavirus that was on the loose, I was quite skeptical. And because I was finishing my master's then, I was plugged into the universities so I could look behind the paywalls. So I was looking at all the literature. And so what we saw were scientific studies, particularly from, for example, John Ioannidis, that were being ignored by the government. We saw science being written out. So this is the same strategy that seems to being played, and we have to keep asking questions, because it's all about what authority, what was the benchmark, what was the threshold of risk, and more people need to understand, and that these questions are not the questions that make someone awkward and the person that you don't really want to talk to at the dinner party. These are bloody important questions that the people need to ask.
It's interesting, just off track here, from the birds to glyphosates in Roundup. I follow a guy called Nick Dugmore, and Nick's a South Australian guy, with stage 4 bowel cancer, and he puts it down to when he was younger, when they used Roundup on everything, and he used to roll on it and didn't care. And I mean, I grew up on the land too, and I recall Roundup. I mean, we had a beautiful lawn, and one day my brother, who didn't like to mow the lawn, went and sprayed the whole thing with the Roundup, and it was like the Sahara Desert. It works very well. And you look at paraquat, there's another one. paraquat. Farmers, the Australian government said, and wait for this one, you can't use it anymore because it's going to harm the birds. What it's really going to harm also are people. And anyway, but they didn't put that part in because they were resisting banning paraquat. So they got 2 years in some areas of agriculture in Australia, not all of it. And they're not very happy. The sugarcane people aren't very happy that they can't use paraquat in 2 years. Yet, if you're looking at the government and CSIRO and all those sort of places, they should be there to tell us that this stuff, we know it's not good for you. 70 other countries have banned it. We know it's going to do damage to you. Even what you eat. I mean, this guy did a test on two wines. One was expensive, the other was cheaper, and he found glyphosate in that wine, which is terrible. It means that you have a chance of falling off the perch earlier than God wanted you to. So all these things that that the cover-ups and the distortion of, the enhancement of, such as the bird flu and stuff, government really has us around their little finger. How do we break that? How do we find out more? And secondly, what's happened to I was always taught to question, to ask why or why not. And nowadays, people just follow like lemmings across a cliff, follow the government. They said that's great for you. Paraquat is not good for you. Glyphosates are not good for you. Jabbing the birds, because we don't know what's going to happen to them, is not good for them. Yet no one questions.
I think more and more people are. So when you and I were growing up, we could not go on the internet and do a big search of all this, and young people can. I think that young people are sicker younger. So I think we certainly shouldn't rule out that there is a big cohort of under 30-year-olds coming up. They know they've been gamed. They know they were gamed during COVID because they now know they weren't at risk, but they were actually more at risk from the technology. They're now understanding that they've got a broad range of gut diseases and other problems that mean they're taking diets and dietary shifts into their own hands. They're watching elderly relatives with diabetes, not reversing their diabetes, and they can do a search on AI today and understand that diabetes can be reversed particularly in the first 7 years. There is actually no excuse for diabetes anymore, type 1 diabetes with the exception, if we had governments working properly. So I think we can't say that. I think maybe in COVID people were more gullible, but I think today people have wizened up. They are more cautious. They are more guarded. And from what I understand, there's a lot less people watching the mainstream media than there used to. So there's not the same capacity to sort of hoard us into acquiescence with their scientific claims and their assurances. So I think I really think we need to be really optimistic about people and just really keep asking people to share information and to ask tricky questions.
And it's very hard also online, though, to find that information. I mean, and I'm not just saying that because it's Google, YouTube, Google, whatever, and other, Rumble, X, all those, they do censor. And a lot of times it's on more on political, but when it comes to science, again they censor, and because it crosses over into a government's policy, so it becomes political, but also becomes your health at stake. And if you want to find out something online and you go to Google, you're not necessarily getting the truth because one, it could be a distortion of the fact, badly written or just made up. Or you'll find that the algorithms will push it so far down that you won't find the alternative treatment or the alternative information to be able to make up your mind. So it sort of stacks. So I think it's hard also for people to find that information because the algorithms from certain search engines won't let you.
I do believe I use AI. I use AI extensively. I use AI to find literature, then I'll go into the scientific literature, onto Google Scholar, for example, and then I'll do another search, I'll double up, I'll cross-reference. So this is discernment. Then I will work with AI because I will have I will have something I want to say, and then I will say, okay, fact check this. Then I will go to a second AI and say, hey, ChatGPT said this. What do you say, Claude? We can do this. We can break through because you're absolutely correct about the Google algorithms. They do not provide you with anything. I've seen on X, it's been harder and harder to find scientific. If I do a scientific search on X 5 years ago, I would find some really great scientists talking about issues. Now the algorithms have muddled that as well. But I do think people are becoming deft. They're understanding how to do a search. And of course, when it's your own health and you don't want to feel sick anymore, or it's your children, you are triply incentivized to do robust analysis and research. So I actually feel like it's better than when I was young. Even though children in schools are facing sort of pseudo-scientific claims that they're meant to sort of believe in, I think they grow up, they go through the teenage years, and they might take longer to have an opinion because they know there's so much information out there. But they're getting like sort of almost like a broad framework of knowledge that I don't think I actually would have had at that age. So I'm really hopeful that we're able to use information and knowledge for good, because as a sociologist, the ignorance and non-knowledge studies, which is a thing in sociology, how you don't know something is just as harmful because you can't do anything about it. So that's fascinated me. So I really am fascinated by knowledge, and I think we're actually breaking through, and the public are very much waking up to the narrowly formed game that's been played.
I certainly hope so. There's other issues. You and I probably disagree on climate change, but I won't go there. I always talk to a geologist, pretty good historian as far as I'm concerned. And climate change, it's always been happening anyway. Otherwise, we'd have still a molten lump of lava. It gets very uncomfortable, to be honest.
I think seasonality, weather patterns, Milankovitch cycles, I think people should, again, be curious. They should say, okay, what is the evidence for anthropogenic versus natural climate change based on the historic record? And they should not just accept what's thrown at them. No.
I agree. And the other thing is too, again, off track here, but I'm enjoying this conversation. We have to stop it. I can't stand it. I'll have a hissy fit later, let me tell you. To save the planet, we're going to destroy it. If you look at the transmission towers and the renewables they're putting up, such as the turbines, I'd look at the Great Dividing Range as an example. And they're just, they're not entirely bulldozing the top of it, but all of these turbines go on the top of the Great Dividing Range. And in Queensland, around Townsville, I think something like 3,000 turbines they want to install. But the problem with that is they're absolutely desecrating the environment to save the environment. And it reminds me of that in Vietnam when those American soldiers napalmed the entire village to save it from communism. And we're doing the same thing with our environment. So I think people need to, and again, mainstream media or legacy media and a lot of alt media or independent media don't talk about that. And we do need to.
I am definitely concerned about the life cycle, for example, of solar panels. I'm concerned about heavy metal leaching. I'm concerned about what happens when a bushfire runs through, which is very likely in Australia, especially I come from northeast Victoria. And the idea, if we have heavy metals leaching and that goes down to aquifers, what does that mean for the farmers, the livestock? The cultivators that live in those regions. So these questions are not being asked. And I saw in the Ag newspaper here, which I get yesterday, they had a photograph of this massive station that's going to have solar panels everywhere. And they blacked out the areas where the solar panels were. They weren't putting it in bright red. They were making it seem really subtle, like it's not much, but actually, if you would have turned that black into red, it's a blight on the landscape.
It's
So,
terrible.
we need to keep thinking, but as I keep saying, because scientific research has been so collapsed in, the scientists that contradict the status quo don't have a job. And the scientists that want a job and that are paying their mortgages, they're going to do what they're funded for.
Which is very sad and not the way civilization should progress. Actually, not progressing. You're most likely going backwards. You and I could talk forever, but I can't. Just quickly, if somebody wants to find out more about physicians and scientists for global responsibility, and I was going to ask you, tell us about them, so you got a minute to do that at the start of the show, but we got sidetracked on some really interesting things. So briefly, tell us about the organisation, and if somebody wants to find out more, how they can do that.
It's an oily rag charitable trust in New Zealand, psgr.org.nz. We have a Substack, which is where we publish a lot of content. That's psgrnz.substack.com. Also, I talked about my own Substack, JRBRUNING, JR Bruning, or Talking Risk, and Substack. And in May 2025, I wrote the piece, Don't Make Bird Flu a Plucking Disaster. If you go to the psgr.org.nz site, you can find the tab that says Endangered Birds. You can click on that, and then you can see the links to Official Information Act requests that we've sent to both the Ministry for Primary Industries and the Department of Conservation. And then lastly, if you wanted to look on the New Zealand Daily Telegraph, the article that I've just published was what was the threshold, endangered birds, vaccines, and the missing risk assessment. So you can look there too.
Absolutely brilliant. So many things to talk about. And actually, invitation. Will you come back on again?
I will, thank you.
Thank you very much. And by the way, I can now say socialist. No, I can't. You're not a socialist. So, you ever have a mental block sometimes and you go, what the hell is the English language of my brain doing to me?
Sociologist.
Thank you so much. I need all the help I can get, apparently. Thank you for your time. I enjoyed it immensely. This is the...
One weather system departs, but another arrives. That's the breakdown for tomorrow. Let's dive into the details. I'm Angus here at the Bureau. This is the National Weather Forecast for Wednesday, the 26th of August. The focus in recent days has been on the east and the southeast. Lots of rain, a smattering of thunderstorms, and the weather system driving that is drifting eastwards. So we'll see some more rain in the morning, but throughout the course of the day, that will pull out into the ocean, and we'll really have an easing pattern across this part of the country with dry weather returning. But at the same time, in the west, a smaller weather system, but quite a potent one through southwestern WA. That's going to be bringing some heavy rainfall, particularly to areas south of Perth and eventually reaching Perth itself. We will see that when we get to Western Australia, but as we go around the country, we'll start in Queensland. Some early morning rain through the Darling Downs and the southeast coast. Possible storm in the mix through the early hours as well. The bulk of that rain will clear up by about 9 a.m. or so, something like that. And after that, we're tending towards drier weather, although one or two showers could persist into the early afternoon, especially around the Brisbane Gold Coast area. Elsewhere, we have a fairly mild day, mostly sunny through areas Rockhampton northwards and across the interior and the west of the state. Overnight and early morning rain for much of New South Wales as well. Really areas from Wollongong right up to the Queensland border. We could see some thunderstorms through the night and into the morning as well. The bulk of the rainfall here will also be easing through the course of the morning, and after lunch we're probably just holding on to a couple of lighter and more sparse showers, but certainly could see a good dump of rainfall through the first half of the day. Temperature wise, we're pretty standard actually for the time of year, looking at temperatures near 20 degrees along the coast including Sydney, and similar inland, a little bit cooler at elevation. And all the rain from Tuesday will clear up overnight for Victoria, so a much drier Wednesday headed your way. There could be a couple of showers around the Gippsland ranges here, but don't expect any significant totals to accumulate. The wind will die off and the day will be fairly pleasant, but it will be a little on the cool side with a lot of temperatures in the mid-teens. Melbourne has a high of 15 degrees with a light southerly, but should stay dry with a little cloud cover. We will also have some cool southerly winds, especially affecting southern Tasmania, alongside a couple of showers. So we'll see our temperatures in the south and even in the west in that 12 to 13 degree range. We're not going to see a lot of rain in Hobart, but I anticipate a couple of showers are possible almost at any stage of day. In the north of the state, quite a different feel there, much warmer, much sunnier around the likes of Launceston, Devonport and Burnie. And after all the rain in South Australia to begin the week, we might not record even a single drop of rainfall here on Wednesday. A much drier weather pattern sets up across the state. Temperatures are pretty standard for August in that mid to upper teens range. Adelaide tracking for a high of 17 degrees. There won't be much wind. There will be a little bit of cloud cover around, but the sun should peek through from time to time as well. Alright, this is where a lot of the rainfall action is tomorrow, particularly south of Perth. So from Mandurah down to Busselton, heavy rain in the morning. We could well have a severe weather warning in play for tomorrow, so definitely keep up to date with that if you live in that part of the state. As we get through the middle of the day Wednesday, that rain will start to move northwards into Perth, then up to Geraldton, and overnight Wednesday into Thursday, that rain will push inland through the great southern and central parts of the wheat belt. And a lot of that rain will actually be really welcome, as it has been a pretty dry winter for much of the southwest land division to date. But some places that rain will come in a bit too hard and fast and all at once, and that's particularly the coast south of Perth, where we will likely see a flash flood risk with the rain tomorrow morning. Other parts of the state further north and further inland will have a fairly settled day, but again, definitely stay up to date with the forecast and the warnings if you live in the southwest. And across Australia's north, those hints of rainfall from earlier in the week around Alice Springs, Tennant Creek, that's all cleared up and moved away. So we're back to dry, sunny, blue skies across central parts of the country. We could start to see a few coastal showers building around parts of the Kimberley, maybe western parts of the top end as well. No big changes yet, but as we move into spring, they might start to become a little bit more common. Updates always available on the Bureau website, app and social media. You can check back here tomorrow for the next forecast video as well. Thanks for watching.
And welcome back to The Pulse. Nice to have your company in this second hour. Instant Polls is our official sponsor. Now, if you want to increase your bottom line, boost your communication with your frontline staff, and gather valuable data from your most important resource, obviously you just go, which are your employees, then you have to visit instantpolls.online to learn more. Now, this week's poll on The Pulse is, do you believe the media coverage of bird flu in Australia is accurate? No. Just use the QR code on our screen to vote. Each vote is secure and anonymous and verified by 2FA. Now, the poll closes next Monday, the 31st of August, and the result will broadcast on the Pulse after 4 o'clock. The link has been published on our Facebook page this afternoon. Share the link, ask your family and friends to participate, to enjoy the love, and also to make sure that your opinion counts. We are giving you a chance here at the Pulse to have your say, and we think that everybody should have a right to have a voice. So go to it. Instantpolls.online is the company, the group that is sponsoring us, and the QR code, as you can see on my right-hand side, it's there, smack bang on the left-hand side of the screen. This is the Pulse.
Management was deciding in the dark. We lacked a method to hear from people across the organisation. We started using instant polls under our brand. Their expert design templates made it effortless to ask the right questions of the people who matter most, our frontline teams. We've seen improved profits and happier staff, and we now make better company decisions thanks to instant polls. Join us. Try your first free poll at instantpolls.online.
So many places where they're using 1080 poison baits.
Yeah, it's an absolute travesty, mate.
It really is.
1080 baits, if you've seen what a 1080 bait does to a dog, it's one of the most horrific things you'll ever witness. And the second you see something like that, you'll be a big advocate for getting rid of 1080 baits. It's not the way to solve the problem with wild dogs and foxes and things like that.
On Sunday, August the 30th, I got a phone call from my husband. I wasn't here, I was out in Aramac staying with family. And he rang me very distressed and crying on the phone and told me that Tippy was dead. And he then described to me how that happened. He said he was inside, heard Tippy outside yelping, which progressively rapidly went to screaming, and he was thrashing him, throwing himself around. He went under my car, which is parked on the veranda in a carport, threw himself under the car and up under the wheel arch, obviously looking for sanctuary. Greg tried to grab him and got hold of his leg, and as he did that, he just dropped dead. So he rang me and told me about this, so I was obviously quite distraught as well. And then he had to go into town, into Bundaberg, to pick up for a pre-arranged appointment. And when he came home a couple of hours later, Faye, our Maremma dog, was also dead. So within a couple of hours, we're not sure, any time between 9:30 and midday is when she died on that morning. So yeah, Greg took them to bury them, and he took Ted with him when he buried these two dogs, and Ted was there with him. And after Greg finished burying them, he wouldn't leave. He just laid, he sat, moved around. He wouldn't leave the gravesite, so Greg had to literally pick him up and take him away. So he knew his mates were in there. So yeah, sorry.
1080 is not a humane poison, and despite people's claims that it is humane, we now recognise that that's not the case. It's not good enough to pretend to ourselves that it's humane and keep on doing the same old thing that we've been doing for years. There's no excuse to keep on using a poison that is not humane and that we know is not humane.
You're with Mike Ryan, telling it as it is. Today's News Talk, The Pulse.
And welcome back to The Pulse. Before we get into our next guest, I just wanted to share some thoughts. Now, shooting was due to start today in the Uragia National Park in northern New South Wales. I think that's between Yamba and Coffs Harbour. A stay has been issued on horse culling only, and they will go to court in 2 weeks. Now, this is from Donna Franklin's post. Donna is from one of the area's prominent heritage horse breeding families. I will read it now. This is what she says. What I know so far, the National Parks and Wildlife Service were asked to produce the document that gave them statutory authority to conduct an aerial culling operation in Uragia National Park. We have known for a long time now that they have been operating in Uragia outside of their own rulebook and management plans, but now it's not just us that know, and that they got asked to provide their paperwork in a courtroom. Couldn't, so there will be a further hearing of the matter in 2 weeks' time. No aerial cull can take place in that time, and in the meantime, they now have an absolute mountain of emails, letters, phone calls, and formal requests for information and documentation to respond to, if they dare. Maybe Ash should have answered the phone in the first place. And then a little picture of a fairy, and says, "Are you okay, Ash? Given that everlasting swamp was part of the same area culling program, it too should be safe for now, and our native birds can rest in peace. Thank you to every little birdie out there who took on the task of looking into the documentation, shared the research, made the calls, sent the emails, and generally put pressure on the National Parks and Wildlife Service to provide the evidence." And I, by the way, I think there needs to be a royal commission, an investigation into the tentacles that have ensnared the National Parks and Wildlife Service. They are acting abhorrently, like big time bullies. The Invasive Species Council, ICS, New South Wales government, federal government, all the other people that are involved or orgs that are involved. There needs to be a royal commission, because when you join the dots, in my own humble opinion, the stench of corruption is huge. Now, back to the to what I was reading, sorry about that. I get very upset because it's not right. They've been hit from so many directions now that even if whatever is happening in court in 2 weeks is not successful, they still have a lot of questions to answer. And the says, well done team. Clap, clap, whistle, whistle. I said it after the fires and I will repeat it again now. Check the management plans that apply to your local national parks, and when you find out how out of date they are, ask the Ukraine militia, otherwise known as the National Parks and Wildlife Service, why. Their fire management plans were all over a decade out of date before the last big fires, and I doubt any of them have been updated. Their pest management is the same. They just do, this is what she says, they just do shit with no authorisation, and their communication and consultation with neighbours, locals and community just does not happen. Check. Make them play by their own rule book. Remind them that they are public servants and we are the public. They work for us. Time to relax and rest up and dry out the boots, but don't put them away. So that was a very, very, it's a great post, and that was on, I think it was on, not X, I think it was more on Facebook, but I have to say it was just stunningly great, and I appreciate that very much. The idea of shooting these creatures, and I go on about it, but we are destroying our heritage. We are throwing our history down the toilet. And as for these animals, you've got to stop. Don't stop, and then you'll rot in hell, and this country will too. We have to take back Australia. Simple as that. It is not the ISCs. It is not the federal government, Chris Bowen, that absolute dwarf of a brain of a person. It is not the New South Wales government, Penny Sharp and the others. They are all to blame. It is not the LNP, who are as weak as anything. It needs to be you. You are the only ones to take back this country, because if you don't, it will be gone forever. Just look at the Great Dividing Range, going to bulldoze the top of it. They're doing it now, killing the koalas. By the way, native animals cannot live 400 metres either side of a turbine because of the noise factor. Birds are wiped out. Native birds are wiped out. If there's a fire, you can't put it out because they are not allowed to have aerial support. You can't get into where the fire is because it's too thick. We haven't got the horses because we've shot them. So we've got to do better. And if you could see I saw a pic the other day of this horse, this beautiful horse, being led to slaughter, and the look of terror on that horse and the other horses' faces. It says that we as a civilization, we as humanity have failed miserably, and we have to fight very hard to take back what is decent and what is Australia.
Australians are paying more and getting less.
Energy security is economic security. Economic security is national security.
We sit on vast reserves of coal, oil and gas, but we are not fuel secure.
Policy unmoored from physics and economic reality has turned an energy-rich land into a decadent state.
No sector is being asked to bear more than agriculture and regional communities.
We are willfully turning a rich nation into a poorer one.
To keep Australia prosperous, sovereign and free is our duty, and in an uncertain world, our best defence.
no animals were harmed in the making of this program. However, we did injure a receptionist and a technician. Sorry. Today's News Talk, The Pulse.
Shannon Laurence-Bade and her daughter Ayla founded Herd on the Ridge Inc. Now, Shannon is renowned for her work with horses and works hands-on every day, having devoted her life to these animals. Ayla works behind the scenes in administrative capacity and has a terrible job that, by the way. She gets the raw end of the deal here. I'll have to talk about that one, I'm sure. And has experience supporting not-for-profits and rescues. Herd on the Ridge Inc. is located in the Upper Hunter Valley, a serene, private and beautiful part of the world. And for decades, Shannon and Ayla have been rescuing and taking in unwanted horses, dogs and cats as a privately funded venture. They are laying the foundation for a dedicated sanctuary property where animals can live safely, recover from trauma, and simply exist without fear. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, hi, Mike.
You're going to go, I always say this to my guest, I know you'll go to heaven. And
oh, thank you.
And I get jealous because you have to give me a lift in or sneak me in, I'm sure. Tell me about your organisation. What motivated you?
Well, my motivation was working with the Brumbies initially travelling down to Victoria and basically taming them and preparing them for domestication. And I spent a lot of time away from home, so I decided to start something up here. So that's what started it up, the passion behind the Brumbies and wanting to do something here at home rather than being away from home.
Mm. And then you also look after other animals, cats and dogs. Would that be right?
We have cats. We have a ex-street cat, mum cat, with her kittens who are looking for homes, and we have a resident pig, and I have several dogs that were rescued from pounds.
Yeah, and you can always judge, can't you, the character of a person on how they treat animals.
Certainly.
And I can see that the pig will be great company, the dogs, great company, the horses, great companies. You know that cats are from Mars, they're from outer space, and they will control you.
Yes.
Anybody who has a cat understands. By the way, we've got, it feels like 672 cats, but we do have a few cats at our place, loved dearly, or in fact, we do as we're told, dearly.
Yes.
How do you find your cat? Tell me about your cat, I'm interested.
Oh, I've got Misty, for example. Oh, she's beautiful. She'll come walking in the bush and stuff with us. Talking about cats and them bossing you around, she'll direct you to where the food is stored, and with the most mournful meow, meow, meow. So that's Misty. And we've got Walter as well. He's a white cat, and he's a little cool dude, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, but you notice they look at you. And then they look down and they have to work out which thumb they're going to put on your head because we are under their control.
Oh, certainly, yes.
But anyway, I think animals are magnificent. To do what you're doing, it's not cheap. Tell me about how hard it is to keep it up, with the cost to run it and make sure you're looking after and doing the right thing by the animals.
Yeah, the cost to run it is. Yeah, it's extensive at times. It's mainly the cost of hay at the moment because we're in drought and we're in winter as well. So that's a task at the moment. Just mainly fundraising. We get a lot of support from the public, which is amazing, and we're very grateful. But yes, it's hard with the hay at the moment. I live my day by the hay. My day's by how the hay's going.
Well, how is your day going today?
I've got a new bale today.
Good on you. Good on you. And how long does the bale last?
A bale, so we get the large square bales. So at the moment they're lasting, we've got 22 horses, so that it's lasting about 4 to 5 days. Yes, yeah.
It's not long, and the horses must look at this like, yum.
Yeah, they just, yes.
So if somebody wanted to help, how do they donate?
They can go to our page and then go to our website. We've got our the details for our bank account there. So that's all there. And also it's on the Facebook page as well, so they'll find it there as well. Yeah.
Now, I was trying to find a video and I can't find it. We had a major data breach with the company that looks after us, so they deleted everything. So I couldn't find that. Couldn't find that video, but it was from the US, and it was just respecting a gentleman that died, and he was called a horse whisperer. You're called a horse communicator. Tell me what you actually do, because I look at I look at these animals, and by the way, I hadn't taken much notice except in the cowboy films for a long, almost all my life, and about 4 months ago, story broke about what they were doing to the Brumbies, and you start to just look, and if you look and you keep looking, you start to learn. You listen, you learn. These animals are just hugely beautiful, gentle, gorgeous animals, but they do communicate, and you do too, don't you? You communicate with the horses.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Tell me.
So I'll tell you now that I actually find it easier to communicate with horses over people like this. But to communicate with horses, you communicate with your energy and your vibrations. So for example, if I'm walking into a round yard situation with say a wild horse, for example, I'll just walk in there and stand in the middle and allow the horse to feel me. And I'll go in there carrying none of my worries or anything. I'll go in there a clean slate, so I'm for the horse. I'm all the horses. So then I'll walk in there as a clean slate, low vibrations, and I'll allow the horse to move around me. And while the horse is moving around, I'll gently ask the horse. I'll move towards the hindquarters, asking the horse to move the hindquarters, step the hindquarters away and face me. Start to look at me, start to pay me attention. That attention may even be a little cock of the ear or a little corner of the eye. The moment we see that, or even the thought of a reaction, I will step back, and that's the reward. Stepping out of the energy. It's like opening the gate, and I'll continue that until then the horse will be facing me. From there I'll have a stick with me, and I will then ask the horse to touch the stick basically, which takes a few stages, but working on the horse's natural curiosity, the horse will actually learn to touch the stick, and I will say touch. So the horse will learn touch, and over time the stick will touch the horse's face. And any time the horse is unsure, we've got that reference already with the touch on the nose. So then if I'll go somewhere where he or she's unsure, I'll come back to the nose and say touch, and they'll go, it's like they go, oh, it's that again, and they're more comfortable. So references and foundations. So my little touch thing is one of a very strong foundation, because it's a strong reference for them when they're unsure, when the stick's going to a new place, because eventually the stick touches them all over. The stick touches them before the hand touches them. So then I'll move up. Eventually my hand will move up the stick, and they'll sniff my hand, and I'll ask them to touch it, and that'll progress to my hand touching them. So that's just a little short piece of what I do with them in the roundup.
Do you think one of the reasons why Australians have this huge barrel of apathy at the moment, because there is a lot of it, don't give a rat's. Do you think that's because of just ignorance? And not being unpolite here either, but do you think that they're just not aware of the horse? Because I would imagine the closest most people have come to a horse in Australia is watching the Melbourne Cup on TV. And so they don't know. I know a lot about horses now, and I didn't. And that's what really has changed my mind, and I get very, very upset with what's happening. But if Australians knew And we have legacy media, mainstream media. They're never going to tell the true story. Not interested because, well, it's not for our audience. We're going to get smashed by government or by by various orgs that are out there to rape and pillage. Do you think it's just the ignorance, or do you think Australia, because you deal with rescued animals, do you think that Australia has sort of lost its way at the moment?
There is a little ignorance, but also I feel it's conditioning a lot too. With if we're talking about the wild horses in particular, a lot of it is conditioning. Like we have the use of words like feral and that sort of thing. It's a hard question for me because I've been brought up differently. I was brought up in New Zealand and not in like an Australian country scene. In Australian country scene, there's a lot of shooting of kangaroos and koalas and wombats and stuff out there without the government being involved. It's the general public. So I wonder if it's that same attitude as well. I'm not sure. I've even heard of people that aim for wombats and hit them and stuff. I'm not sure on that one. It could be possibly a combination of the conditioning and the already existing sort of, I don't know, that killing sort of attitude where we'll go out and shoot a few roos sort of scenario and not even take into consideration the being or anything. So yeah, I feel it's both perhaps. I'm not sure. It's a bit of a tricky question, that one.
Yeah, it's very sad, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
Animals do rely on you and I and everybody else, humans, to look after them. And when we neglect that part of our responsibilities, animals do suffer, and we've learned so much. Tell me this, as we wind this up, two things I want to know. First of all, what have you, as a person, learnt from a horse?
Oh, I've learned a lot from a horse. I've learned patience is the biggest one. And I've actually learned that you get a high from patience. It's a natural high. So I've learned that. And learning how to push that patience further, that's another one. Understanding, compassion, and just the energies felt between two beings and how two different beings and how strong that can be. These are magnificent beings who hold really strong vibrations, and they know us. They know us for generations, and their genetics know us. Our genetics know them. That's another thing I've learned from the wild horses recently is their genetics remember us. Working with them, they feel that. And for us to go and harm them in such a manner, it's not right. It's really, it's actually confusing, because we should, like you said before, Mike, we should be the caregivers, not the harmers. Yeah.
And for those that shoot the animals, whether it's a horse or whatever, it just smacks of being a bully, the mildest term I could use. And that doesn't make a bloke go and shoot a horse, doesn't make that bloke a man.
No.
It makes him a coward, basically. And the National Parks and Wildlife Service, for being part of this massacre, I think they, again, I keep saying they need a royal commission, because they are doing a terrible, terrible thing to Australia. And I can smell, when the breeze is blowing my way, I can smell the stench of corruption. Look, it's been absolutely wonderful chatting with you, Shannon, but we don't know your website. What's your website?
It's on the Facebook page. Sorry, I haven't memorised it. It's, heardontheridge.com.au, I think, yes.
Good on you. Something like that.
Yes.
Good on you. When you next speak to one of your horses, please tell your horse that we are doing our very best.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. This is The Pulse.
G'day, my name's Andy. I am a dairy farmer in Queensland. In the year 2000, there were almost 1,600 dairy farms in our state. Today, that number is 220, 1/8. The Rosinski family, they are also dairy farmers in our state. Their contract is almost coming to an end, and they cannot find a new home for their milk, which may force their closure. Watch this.
Hey everyone, Jason Rosinski. 4 weeks to go. Still no contract. Still no conversations. Still no rumblings. Nothing. You would think that, being that I'm in the Wide Bay electorate and our member is Tony Perrott, who is the State Ag Minister. I've spoken to him twice. He knows our situation. Keep getting told behind the scenes things are happening. Well, we're 4 weeks away, Tony. What is happening? What are you going to do about it? No point having a dairy plan in Queensland signed up to with processors and government and East Oz Milk if no bugger honours it. Because that's where we're at the moment. It's a useless piece of paper. Useless. What are you going to do about it? Are you actually going to honour things and try and grow the dairy industry in Queensland? Or are you here to screw it into the ground? Because I tell you what, we had 1,500 rough farmers in the year 2000 when you all deregulated it. And now we're at 220.
The state government, in February this year, signed up to the Queensland Dairy Plan. Its key targets were to lift output to at least 300 million litres or more of white milk annually by June 2032, to achieve a 3% increase in the size of the producing dairy herd in Queensland, and a 5% lift in production per cow, and to counter reliance on interstate milk by boosting local fresh milk production, which currently meets roughly 45% of state consumption. The Queensland Primary Industry Minister, Tony Perrott, said it was crucial to give the industry confidence to borrow and invest, and I quote, "I want to see fresh milk production in this state grow, and in doing so, the department will play its role, particularly in research and development and extension," which is very interesting because the Norco CEO, Michael Hampson, said recently, Norco is working on an active capital project to expand its Gold Coast bottling facility, though he said progress could be accelerated with support. My concern is that the state government is providing a lot of lip service and partaking in photo opportunities, but when push comes to shove, they're not being proactive. And I would think that losing dairy farms in Queensland, which is seemingly the case, is very counterproductive to the Queensland Dairy Plan, which really sets out a pathway for a great amount of growth, not only on farm with milk production, but also encouraging and enticing new families to join the dairy industry in our state. I implore the state government of Queensland to take action, to put money where your mouth is. You are a well-performing government, but you are performing dismally here. And that doesn't need to be the case. come along for the journey. Invest in our Queensland dairy industry. Bring confidence back to our dairy industry. Help facilitate change.
Not the station for people who label truth as misinformation just because they don't like it.
For facts and truth.
Today's News Talk, The Pulse.
And welcome back to The Pulse. Sian, Whitewolf and Molyneux. I get that. Molyneux, that's what it is. Is an Australian entrepreneur. Slap me down. President of Wild Horse Protection Australia, and a passionate advocate for practical, long-term solutions for Australia's wild horses. A mother and guardian of 3 wild dingoes, who aren't dogs, by the way, Sian has spent years developing a deep connection with Australia's wildlife. Now, for more than a decade, Sian has worked with entrepreneurs and businesses around the world as a coach, mentor, and energetic healer, helping people to align purpose with business and personal growth. Another one that will go to heaven. As president of Wild Horse Protection Australia, a brand new org, Sian is leading a movement based on and focused on creating positive collaborative pathways for the future of Australia's brumbies. Now, Sian's here to talk about her brand new show. Starts just over an hour's time here on The Pulse. Sian, thank you for joining me. Greetings, you're frozen.
Hello, Mike. Thank you for having me again.
And always a pleasure, always a pleasure. Just quickly on the dingoes. It's amazing because we have a show tomorrow with one of our great guests of been on many times, and she's also going to be looking at the dingo. How misrepresented when it comes to the truth are the dingoes in this country?
Yes, very misrepresented. Unfortunately, sorry if my internet's not the best, I'm not sure what's going on. Unfortunately, they're labelled as the wild dog in Australia and not represented as the actual species that they are, and that they've been here for a long time, that they are an important part of our landscape and keeping the balance as an apex predator. So they're just labelled as a pest and a wild dog, I think, because they do put pressure on farming, but there has to be some coexisting pathways that happen. And worse than the misrepresentation is that they're using 1080 bait on the poor dingoes, which is just horrific. And many practices that the parks are doing need to be outlawed, to be honest.
It is terrible, and I think those people need to be also held accountable because they know what they're doing. They know it's going to hurt, or the huge pain. It's just terrible, and I think the idea that we kill is just it's a bit archaic. We need to stop that. We need to start looking, as you said, to learn to live with what's around us instead of the old age, out with a sledgehammer. What do they say in Queensland? Anything that moves, you shoot it. Anything that doesn't, chop it down. And it hasn't changed. We've got to stop that throughout Australia because once they're gone, they're gone. And the dingo's been here for, I think, 5,000 years. Is that right?
Yes, well, I mean, that's the last evidence that they've found, but just because we haven't found something, it doesn't mean they haven't been here for a lot longer. And when I look at my dingoes, I can see evolution in them. To me, they've been here for a long, long time, and they're part of the landscape. And they also were companions of the Aboriginal people as well, First Nations people, and you can see that in them too. So they're quite a unique animal. It's like they're wild, but they can also be a companion. So we really need to treat them with respect and revere our wildlife for what they can do for us. And even worse, Mark, that you're saying like shoot it and sledgehammer it, that's a lot quicker death than a 1080. Terrible. I saw a rat dying the other day of 1080, and it took a good day, the poor thing. And so God knows what it's like for the dingoes.
Or anything for that matter. And isn't it funny you mentioned that? I understand, things stick in my mind, which I need to see someone about, I'm sure. But when you mentioned that the dingo can turn its head right back and stuff, I had this imagery of The Exorcist, and I'm thinking, oh my God, who can do those? Go back, go back. Tell me about your big bash that you've organised, and that it's very, very important too. So tell us about this.
Yes, well, really, I'm trying to think outside of the box. Me and my lovely ladies in our group have come up with a very exciting event. We want to raise awareness. We want it in the spotlight more, what's going on with the Brumbies and the cull. We want Australia to care. And we're also trying to raise funds for, thousands of acres. And so we thought, well, let's think outside of the box and actually do what a lot of people around the world do, and we put on a ball and we do a gala fundraiser. So it covers all of those bases, and it's pretty exciting. We have an amazing lineup already. We still have a couple of spots to fill, but already, we have the amazing Mark Latham who's speaking. We have Mrs. USA 2022 who's flying all the way over from America to be our MC, and she has a lot of experience with advocacy for the Mustangs over in America. She's done some incredible things. We also have confirmed, this is very exciting, Bob Holder. Have you heard of Bob Holder, Mike?
No, I've heard of a cup holder, but not Bob Holder.
Right. Well, Bob Holder is classified as the oldest cowboy in the world. He's 94 years old, and he's actually been nominated for Australian of the Year. So he's quite a celebrity in the cowboy world. So we actually have him, that he has said yes to be one of our speakers. So it's really exciting. We have the wonderful Billy D. She is going to sing on the night, and we also have our headliners, Imperial Prey, which have played with Guns N' Roses and Midnight Oil and all the big acts. So yes, and there are rumours we could possibly get Jack Thompson. So it's going to be quite the lineup, and we'd like to get a lot of eyes happening and media, and really spread the awareness out there that Australia cares about its Brumbies, and we don't want this. Even celebrities and important people do not want this.
They don't, and I think we as a nation need to at the moment hang our head in shame. And we do some great things. Australia is a great country, but we also need to do a little more, not to sit on our hands and turn our heads away and not look at what is actually happening. And the Brumby is so important for our history. We can't erase our history. The Brumby is so important to our future, because without recognising our past, you can't move forward. And most importantly, there is no reason for all the money in China. There is no reason at all to kill any more Brumbies. In the first place, it was barbaric. There is simply no reason, unless there is a nefarious back event happening, which it is. It's all about money. And it's almost like a war. Someone said it's like a war. It is. It's an information war, for that matter. But for the horse itself, it's a lot more severe. Your show tonight, it's called, let me get this right. It's, I have completely, and I did your promo for you. Wild Legacy. Isn't it terrible? Mental block.
You got it.
I need a scotch, quick.
You do well, Mike, remembering everybody and all the guests and all the information. You do a remarkable job.
Yes,
So
a good scotch actually doesn't have to be good at this stage, as long as it's got some alcohol in it. Tell me about Wild Legacy, and tonight your first show. You're looking at why the wild horse story matters.
So we wanted to keep with the theme of wild, us being Wild Horse Protection Australia. And so Wild Legacy is about wild horses, wild places, and our living heritage, but more importantly, the relationship that people have with those wild horses. So we'll be covering landscapes around Australia and also globally. We have a lot of global connections with the horse world. So everything from the Australian Brumby to the Mustangs of America, and then even going into Mongolia with the wild horses there. So we like to explore the relationships, and also it's important with what's happening globally, because it's not just happening in Australia, the pressure and the land grabs and I was just looking at the Mustang roundup, which is just awful. There were 6 deaths in one roundup. And, it's even more prolonged than what's happening in Australia. So we want to be able to talk to those guests as well, because when we come together, we can learn things together, and we can, as a power, put pressure on the government. So I think sharing stories and what's happening and bringing us all together will be powerful. So I think that's where we'll stand out a bit in the show, so people can come along and join in and get more of a global feel for things, and storytelling as well. So we'd like to explore stories and people that have had relationships with wild horses.
Absolutely brilliant. Now, if somebody wants to go to the Big Bash and be part of it, 2 things. How do they do that? And secondly, do you provide them with Panadol for the next day?
No, that's their responsibility. And they might need it. No. So they can go onto our website, and
We've just lost Sian there. She'll come back in a second because the internet is it's doing some wild things at the moment. I'll come back to Sian now. I think Sian is there. Sian, Earth calling Sian. We're there. So you were saying you're just about ready to tell us how they can get hold of tickets and stuff. How do they do that?
You can go to our website, wildhorseprotectionaustralia.org, and then we have an events link. And you can go on there and book your ticket. So it's $2.50 a ticket, and that's so it can go towards the organisation. It's for our donations, and you also have an option to pay that off with Klarna and Zip. So we're giving payment options if you can't afford that all in one go, which is awesome. So you can go onto our website. I also have links on my Facebook. Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. I've got to tell you about 2 packets of Panadol. Actually, I've been taking, I forgot, it's another one. Anyway, my wife gives it to me all the time, says I should have it more often. It's good for the blood or something. But headache tablet, let me tell you, because if you don't have a headache tablet, you really haven't had a great night out. Let's destroy some grey or some brain cells. Sian, thank you so much. Look forward to your show in just over an hour's time. Thank you very much for all that you're doing for the Brumbies and the animals throughout Australia. It has been absolutely a joy to be able to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. This is The Pulse.
Are you asking the right questions? Have you heard the whole story? Have you looked beyond the surface? What have you yet to see? Have you seen the new findings? Have the new numbers changed what you believed? Is there more beneath the silence than the answers you had received? Are you asking the right questions? Can you see the new evidence? Have you paused to question what the plan was built upon? Are you considering every option before more life is taken? Shouldn't certainty be a must? Oh, there's no turning back before more life is taken. Do you know why these valleys became our home? Have you watched us drink from the mountain streams? Have you seen the paths our mothers taught us? Have you asked what we gave back to these mountains? Have you considered every alternative? Do you think protection and compassion can walk this mountain path together before the wind carries only our silence? Before our ghosts walk these mountain trails. Could you lead us to a better way, where every question is answered with honesty and transparency, where every option has been explored before the wind carries only our silence, before it is too late? Could you lead us to a better way? Lead us to a better way. Lead us to a better way.
What have you yet to see? It's amazing how they can distort the figures. Not only with the horses, look at the environmental vandalisation they're doing, trying to save the planet. They're destroying, in this country, all that is good about Australia. Just deplorable. It's the kill, 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 or bulldoze, or whatever. And I've seen the holes with native animals in it that have been killed because of the installation of these monstrosities called the wind turbines. Absolutely terrible. Coming up next here on The Pulse, we have the protagonist. Tonight, it's just a replay. Our guest, they're having trouble. See what happens overseas? It's Telstra's fault. No, it's not. They're not with Telstra. But they'll be with us, we believe, later in the week. So we have a replay, still a great one. Then at 7 o'clock, we'll also have a brand new show called Wild Legacy. It's going to be an absolute perler, as they would say. And again, talking about Australia's animals.
This is today's News Talk, The Pulse.